it's been less than a year since LocoRoco 2 hit the PSP, here comes another installment in the franchise. LocoRoco Midnight Carnival is more spin-off than sequel, and though it's trying to be a serious platformer, the only things serious about it are the insane difficulty, crazy level designs, and shoddy controls. Midnight Carnival is a platformer in the strictest sense, comprised of a series of individual levels that you complete in a linear fashion. While the series is known for a more laid-back experience, Midnight Carnival shoves extremely challenging treks down your throat. They start off manageable for those familiar with the mechanics, but eventually the levels become outright cruel, littered with all sorts of nasty pitfalls and traps. Try imagining those insane ROM hacks of classic Mario titles, and you'll get the idea. It really kills the joyful vibe its predecessors were known for. What's worse is that you have to completely restart a stage if you fail, unless you manage to reach the precious mid-level checkpoint. Even then, death comes at a costly price, as you'll only get 3 tries to reach the end. Once you've completely expired, you can pay a toll in the form of collected fruit to continue, or give up and retry from the beginning. There are some items you can purchase in the shop to aid you in your adventure, but they do little to alleviate the challenge. It's incredibly maddening, so don't be surprised if you're tempted to inflict damage on your PSP after a failed attempt. Of course, a successful voyage ends up feeling very sweet if you manage to actually make it, but it's not worth losing your mind in the process. Midnight Carnival also sees the series' pacing stepped up, with much of the action going at a blistering pace. It's definitely not the same lighthearted LocoRoco you remember. There's also an option to team up with up to 4 friends to tackle levels, but doing so only adds to the mindless chaos. No matter how you slice it, it's possible to make even the easiest game frustratingly difficult with horrible controls. That's just the issue with Midnight Carnival, which demands a high degree of precision from players, but whose jumping and tilting mechanics fall well short of enabling that. A good portion of the ridiculous tribulations the game puts you through are largely a byproduct of unintuitive controls. The new mechanic that allows each LocoRoco to jump much higher than before is compromised by one fatal flaw. It's mapped to both shoulder buttons, which also happen to control movement. Assigning jumping and movement to the same buttons is a recipe for disaster. The best example is wall jumping, which requires a level of precision that will leave your fingers in knots. Adding insult to injury are the unused face buttons. There's no reason, apart from blind adherence to the series conventions, that the jump function couldn't have been mapped to one. The result is a control scheme that borders on broken. The levels may be clever, but poor controls prevent you from really appreciating them. Midnight Carnival occasionally sports some radical design choices, but otherwise, it's all too familiar. The visuals retain some charm, but it no longer captivates with its quirky style. The soundtrack is still catchy, but the characteristic grunts and cries of LocoRocos have long since overstayed their welcome. LocoRoco Midnight Carnival will alienate all but the most devout LocoRoco fanatics. Precision platforming and gimped controls just don't go well together. If you've got the patience for relentless trial and error, then have at it. Otherwise, stick to LocoRoco 2. You'll retain your sanity, and your PSP will remain in working order.